Hey, welcome back to another online ELA lesson with Miss Maloney. So today we're going to elaborate or push a little bit more on the writing process as we did last week. Last week we had worked on the constructive writing number 1. This week we're going to be learning about constructive writing number 2. So last week we did a writing that involved story elements. Do you remember the story elements that we have learned so far? Yes, great. The story elements that we learned so far were character, setting, plot, and theme. So last week we answered the question of what do you think is the most important story element? I had chose theme because every time I read a story, I like to learn or know what I have learned when I have read. Because the theme is really just telling me about the message or the moral of the story. That's the best part when I read a book. However, you could have thought different. You might like the setting because you like how the story is played out in different places or how a character goes from one place to another. You might like the characters because you like to see how the characters might change from the very beginning to the very end. Or you just might like the plot in general, the entire story from how it starts in the beginning. It might start out slow and then it becomes really rocky in the middle in the climax, and then from the falling action to the resolution, how it smooths all out, and possibly they might solve their problems at the end. It's something that you like. You kind of like that roller coaster type story, which I don't blame you. The plot is really good too. But overall, personally, I like theme. Well, before we get started in our lesson today, let's go over some video norms. Number 1, please always have some paper and a pencil with a good eraser to take great notes. Number 2, listen carefully, for there will be questions throughout our session. Number 3, pause, reflect, and rewind if you need to. And number 4 is usually not written, but always have fun. It's always good to have fun while learning. But let's dive in. Normally we just have one objective when we are doing our lessons. However, since we are doing the writing process, it is a process. Therefore, we're going to hit more than one objective in our lesson today. So our first objective is, I can organize my writing to support an opinion. For the second one, I can use reasons to support my opinion. So even though you have an opinion, you gotta use the text or the evidence from the text to help you or to help the reader understand how your opinion is valid or makes sense. The third one is, I can use linking words and phrases to connect an opinion and reasoning. So throughout your writing, you're going to be using various words to link and piece together your writing so it makes sense. In sequence, meaning in order. But for today, we're just going to focus on the first one, which is I can organize my writing to support an opinion. So I'm so excited to write the second piece because in my last writing, I have written about how theme was my favorite story element, and the 2 stories I had used for evidence was Cinderella and Happily Ever After. If you're not familiar with those stories, I highly suggest that you go and read those 2 stories. They also can be found in the ARC bookshelf and in the Clever app. But today, you will have a chance to demonstrate your understanding of how authors develop theme messages through characters by writing a short essay in response to the following prompt. What is a theme, message of, and you put the title of the book that you read. What key details, story elements does the author use to communicate this theme or message? In addition to your essay, you will need to turn in a thinking map with notes, quotes you use to generate or make your essay, and the W.1 rubric to score. That will all be included in the lesson, and I will definitely show and break down what you need to do to get an A on this essay. Okay, for constructed response number 2, you will be filling out a sheet that looks just like this with the name, date, and class. The directions are, after watching my video on how to create your constructive response number 2, you will then create a response of your own. So right here is the W.1 rubric. You are trying to score 8 points, which is a proficient and well answer for your text response. As we scroll down, here I have an example of my story elements thinking map. The story is the 3 little pigs. The protagonists are the 3 little pigs. The antagonists that are against the 3 little pigs is the big bad wolf. I do not have any other characters in the story. The setting is in the woods or the forest, depending on what version of the 3 little pigs you have read. They could be in the woods or they can be in the forest. And this happened during the daytime. The plot, the main problem and conflict. The 3 little pigs needed to build a house for each of them to live in. What were they struggling with? What materials works best to make a stable or strong house that will not fall down? How did they solve their problem, their resolution? After the big bad wolf blew down the other 2 houses that were made out of sticks and straw, the pigs realized that the one made out of bricks was the strongest and safest of them all. Okay, good story, but what is the message or the lesson behind this entire story? Well, taking your time to do something right pays off. What does that mean? It means at the beginning of the story, each pig built a house. The first 2 pigs didn't spend much time making their houses, but the 3rd pig carried heavy bricks and carefully stacked them into a solid house. Okay, so based off of the story that I have read, I have filled out all the components that were needed in the story elements thinking map. This will help me think through when I create my paragraph response for constructive response number 2. As I scroll down, this is where you will put your answers at. Here is my example of my pre-write process of the writing response. So in this box, I start off with my beginning sentence, which is the theme or message of the story that I read, which will be the 3 little pigs, is, and I will explain here. I wrote some of my thoughts down of the theme of the story, and is the same exact thing that I have written in the theme portion of my thinking map. But I also included some key details that I needed to remember, like the characters, the 3 little pigs, and the big bad wolf. The setting in the woods, and the plot that is also stated in my thinking map. Now that I have my response. Now as you see, this response is not as big as response number 1 because it's really just asking the definition or trying to identify the theme of the story, but it's also you have to add other story elements to back up the reasoning behind the theme. So this will be considered my rough draft, all my thoughts put into complete sentences. Later on throughout the week, I will go back and clean this all up and maybe add some more things. Okay? Well, that was amazing. I hope you have learned everything you need to learn how to construct this response number 2. And if you have any questions, you can always rewind this video to review it again Make sure you have taken notes with your notepad and pencil so you can refer back to in case you need them when you're doing your writing. And remember our objective: I can organize my writing to support an opinion. So, until next time.